ready for some football, some Texans Today party.
Welcome into Texans Today, everybody. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and coming up on today's show, the top Texans storylines as we prepare for the final week of the regular season. I can't believe it's already here. It seems like, the season's gone by in the blink of an eye, but here we are, very into the season. The Texans, they clinched a playoff spot, but can still win the division. All we need is the Titans to beat the Jags. Come on, Titans, we got you. We're actually going to be talking about the Titans later on in today's program as well. But if you didn't know, the schedule got released for Week 18, and the Texans, they will be facing the Colts at noon on Sunday. So make sure you tune in for our last regular season watch party of the year. It's going to be a great time and a little precursor for some playoff football, some playoff action. And you heard my intro. I have a brand new long intro song. I think y'all are really going to like it. I think you're really going to like it. And if you want the latest around the Houston Texans, and if you want to join my watch party on Sunday, just get daily videos around this team, this is your one-stop shop. We are the #1 Texans YouTube channel out there, and we are 100% for free. I'm not going to put y'all behind a paywall, not going to make you pay for my content. You get Texans videos every single day for free. Just make sure to hit that sub button. Help me out. We just passed 42,000. I want to hit 45 by the end of the playoffs and hopefully into the Super Bowl run, right, Dilly? Hell yeah, he's shaking his head as well. All right, if you're brand new to the program, this is how we break down stories, rumors. I use a Toro heads meter, so if I give something 0 Toro heads or fake news, not happening. 1 Toro head, a small shred of truth. 2 Toro heads, think of it kind of like 50-50. 3 Toro heads, pretty likely. And if I give something 4 Toro heads, H-Town, hold it down. It is happening. All right, so let's get into our first story of today's show. Maybe the biggest question that Texans fans have regarding this Sunday's matchup up against the Colts: should the Texans rest their starters, their injured starters, up against Indianapolis? I'm going to give this one 2 Toro heads. One thing about that Week 17 game against the Chargers is I felt myself holding my breath multiple times with guys getting injured, right? Like, it felt like, especially in the second half, every other play there was a Texans guy down, a Texans player down on the field, and it had me worried as we head into the playoffs because, as I mentioned, not a ton of upward mobility for your Houston Texans. Obviously, if the Jags lose to the Titans, the Texans can claim the AFC South. But, I mean, in terms of if the Jags win, wild card, I don't necessarily mind playing, the Jags or the Patriots. Honestly, the one team that makes me the most nervous in the wild card round would be if the Texans played the Ravens. So if the Jags have it handily, if they win that game, I don't know. I don't want to see any of our guys get injured, and I know it goes back to that, old rest versus rust debate. Do you rest your guys and have them ready to go in the playoffs? Or, the flip side of that coin is, do you rest them and maybe they're a little flat, they're a little rusty for that week or that wild card game up against whoever they face off? Let me know down in the comments section. What do you think? Should the Texans rest injured starters this Sunday? Give me a yes, give me a no down below in the comments section. I think some guys, yes. I think the Texans should play it on the safe side with certain guys. Now, offensive line like Trent Brown, Aireontae Ersery, I wouldn't mind if those guys sat out another game because Blake Fisher, I actually selfishly would like to see him play one more game to get some evaluation on him going into the playoffs and going into next season. Aireontae Ersery had surgery on a broken thumb. Trent Brown, he's been dealing with knee, ankle injuries. He also has been dealing with hand injuries himself. Ed Ingram had an ankle injury that he sustained up against the Chargers. And then Woody Marks has been dealing with a foot and ankle injury as well. So, obviously he looked good up against LA. But these are all guys on the offensive side of the football that are pretty important for this team moving forward if they want to go on a playoff run, especially Woody Marks in the backfield. And in a game against the Colts, like I said, maybe you don't sit all these guys. Maybe Woody Marks, you have him more on like a snap count. But Ersery, Brown, I wouldn't mind if those guys sat out this Week 18 matchup. Same on the defensive side. I talked about guys going down. Derek Stingley, Kamari Lassiter, Azeez Al-Shaair, all were down at different points in that game up against LA. So if it was up to me, I don't want to go into the playoffs missing any of these key guys on the defensive side of the football. Will Anderson Jr. said to Aaron Wilson after that Chargers game, we've got dogs at every level on this defense. And I want to keep it that way. I don't want anybody out. I don't want to have anybody missing playoff time for a, somewhat meaningless game in Week 18. I know, if the Titans do beat the Jags, you can move up and win the division. But at the same time, I don't want to chase that in, having that goal be the detriment of this team to have a couple injuries of guys who are playing through injuries, like Kamari Lassiter, like Derek Stingley, like Azeez Al-Shaair, Denico Autry. He's been dealing with a knee injury all season long. So very interested to see what the Texans do with those injuries. Now coming up, the Titans. Are they taking another Texans DC? And not so fast, Dylan. We're going to tell them my Toro heads in just a moment. Before I let you know if the Titans are going to steal another Texans defensive coach, because they've done it before. Could they be doing it again with Matt Burke? I'll let you know here in just one moment. But first, got to tell you about the sponsor of today's program. That is PrizePicks. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. I love PrizePicks. Dylan loves PrizePicks, and I know you will too. Whether you're starting a new routine or making player picks for the first time, trying something new can be hard. But in life and on PrizePicks, it always feels good to be right. With high-pressure playoff matchups every weekend and elite hoops action almost every night, the action never stops, and PrizePicks lets you take control. Did you miss fantasy football? Do you miss it a little bit? You're probably, maybe you won your fantasy football league. Maybe you're like me and you got 8th place. Either way, PrizePicks gives you that same thrill. You can play fantasy football every week. Pick your favorite players and win when they hit their projections. And for this week, I'm filming this on Monday. No projections yet for Houston, so I'm going in the game that we need to watch as well. Tennessee and Jacksonville. I'm going the more on Tennessee, and I'm going the less on Jacksonville. Cam Ward, give me the more. Tony Pollard, give me the more. Trevor Lawrence, I'll go the less on him. You can use a lineup like mine or make your own, because it's not just football. It's also basketball, hockey. They have MMA, esports, all available with our friends over at PrizePicks. Join the millions of users and sign up today for America's #1 fantasy sports app. But when you do, make sure, go ahead and download the PrizePicks app. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. All that information down in the comments and description of today's show. Shout out to PrizePicks for sponsoring the program. All right. Could the Titans be taking another Texans defensive coordinator? I'm going to give that one Toro head. And not that Matt Burke doesn't deserve head coaching interviews, not that he doesn't deserve his flowers for what he's done, because remember, early on in the season, DeMeco Ryans gave up defensive play calling duties, gave it to Matt Burke, and, he's done awesome. The Texans defense, one of the best in the NFL since probably the 2010s. This team has been awesome, and other teams are recognizing that. This was from earlier last week. Dianna Russini reported, sources say the Titans are expected to reach out to Lou Anarumo, Jeff Hafley, Matt Burke, and Jesse Minter. Interesting. All defensive coordinators right here, right? Matt Burke being one of those defensive coordinators for their head coaching vacancy. Internally, Matt Nagy is also viewed as a serious candidate, the Chiefs' offensive coordinator. And like I said, this wouldn't be the first time the Titans dipped into the Texans' coaching well for their head coach. As many of you might remember, Mike Vrabel was a Texans defensive coordinator before he got hired to be the Titans head coach. And the Titans are probably kicking themselves in the butt as Vrabel has the Patriots as one of the top seeds in the AFC this year. And the Titans looking at another top 10 pick. So probably should have kept the ship steady, kept Vrabel on staff, but Titans are going to Titan. So that's them. Like I said, I don't think they hire Matt Burke. I don't think he gets a head coaching job, especially for the Titans. It doesn't really make sense, right? You have a young quarterback in Cam Ward. You're trying to develop him. Why would you bring a defensive-minded head coach in? I know it's kind of worked out with DeMeco Ryans and C.J. Stroud, but going into year 2 of his development, I just don't see the connection there. But shout out to Matt Burke. He does deserve his flowers for everything he's done for this Texans defense this season. All right, let's talk about the last storyline on today's show. The Texans, could they get key guys returning for the playoffs? I'm going to give this one 4 Toro heads. I know they'll at least get one because I have been told by trusted sources that Texans rookie safety Jaylen Reed probably going to return for the wild card game. He's been working his tail off. I reported, on IR for the second time this season. I was like, oh, he's probably going to miss the rest of the year. I had people reach out to me and say, nope, Jaylen Reed, he's going to try to return and get right for the playoffs. So really good news there for a Texans secondary that is a little bit thin at depth. You have Miles Bryant, Kalen Bullock at safety. Adding a guy like Jaylen Reed could 1,000% help. Kayvon Wallace actually didn't look too bad up against the Chargers, but having a guy like Jaylen Reed will definitely help with that secondary depth going into the playoffs. Another guy, and I know he wants to play, Tank Dell. And he's giving me a lot of false hope, Tank. I love you, and I want to see you out there on the field, and he's been tweeting a ton over the past month, little, teasers, breadcrumbs here and there, highlights of his saying, like coming soon, this, that, and the other. I have not heard anything, definitive on whether or not Tank Dell would be able to return or could return to the playoffs for the year Houston Texans. I would argue it's probably on the less likely side. I don't think Tank Dell would be able to make it back this year, especially since he hasn't played a down of NFL football this regular season. So just hoisting him into, a key pressure moment like that, I don't think it's fair to him. I don't think it's fair to this Texans team at this point. But, just having him on the sidelines, having him there is a big boost for this Texans team. Another guy who hasn't played a single snap this season, Joe Mixon. And still, no word on Joe Mixon, whether or not he'll be back for this Texans team. I mean, he's another guy who's been tweeting a ton on social media. And we've, had the back and forth earlier in this year. Ian Rappaport tweeted, Joe Mixon not going to play the rest of the year. Joe Mixon quote tweeted that and said, Ian Rappaport, you don't know anything about my health status and what I'm going through right now. Kind of looks like Ian Rappaport was right, though, right? Like, no Mixon back yet. I did kind of talk about a couple weeks on the show around Joe Mixon's contract and how that might be a key factor, because if Joe Mixon was to come back and get injured, his next year of his contract would be guaranteed for the Texans. If he doesn't play, then they can cut him this offseason, save, close to $8-9 million, and then go ahead and make another move. So I think that might be the more likely route for one Joe Mixon, but you never know. We'll have to see what happens, because the Texans, they are very tight-lipped when it comes to injuries on their side. And then lastly, Jimmie Ward. This one is a real head-scratcher as well, because he's dealing with some, legal battle issues off the field, and he has been dealing with a foot injury as well. But, we were told at the beginning of November that Jimmie Ward was, quote-unquote, a couple weeks away. More than a couple weeks, right? No, beginning of November, we're almost to the new year. We're playing our next game in 2026, and still no update on Jimmie Ward. It would be nice to be able to get him back, and I don't know if the legal issues have anything to do with him still being out, because, like I said, beginning of November, quote-unquote, it was, a couple weeks away from being able to return. Doesn't look like that now. So we'll have to see what happens with Jimmie Ward, but at least looks like we'll be getting Jaylen Reed back for the playoffs. Now, that's the end of today's video. If you made it to the very end, you love this team, go down and spam those H's. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. We'll have more content, and make sure to tune in. We have our live show on Wednesday. Don't miss out. The last show of the year. New year. Last show of the year. Make sure to tune in. We'll be live at 3:30 Central Time this Wednesday here on Texans Today.